Good morning. I'm Pete McMurray. Our next guest, we have a very special guest in studio with us. He is the Weekend Update anchor on Saturday Night Live.
It's Weekend Update with Colin Jost and Michael Che.
What's up, everybody?
Welcome to Weekend Update. I'm Colin Jost.
I'm Michael Che, and here are tonight's top stories.
An NFL investigation has concluded that the New England Patriots likely cheated by deflating footballs used in the AFC Championship game. The investigation was conducted by just looking at Bill Belichick.
He'll be appearing at Zanies this weekend. You can go to Zanies.com for information. Colin Jost, thanks for coming in.
Hi. Good to have a mic, right?
It's good to see you.
Good to see you. The crazy thing about that joke was I knew it was the first joke up about the Patriots. As I walked to the update desk on live show, the only person I saw standing in the studio was Robert Kraft, the owner of the Patriots.
What?
So I saw him. He was just hanging. He was there with Lauren, hanging out, watching the show, and I passed him and made eye contact going to the desk. I was like, "That's my first joke," and it was like the only person I could see in the audience. The whole audience was Robert Kraft. I was like, "Is this okay?"
When you do a Weekend Update, does it set the tone if your first joke is a hit? You think, okay, we got it.
It's the hardest thing because you're coming from a dead standstill. Like they've just seen. By the way, you'll be going on after like Prince performs.
Right. It's after the musical guest the first time.
That's who your opener is that you have to follow. So then it'll be like, and now back to comedy. So that first joke it's the hardest one to get right. I mean, historically, because you're just going from nothing into trying to get laughs.
I have so many questions for you. I mean, Saturday Night Live is the goal for anyone that even thinks they're funny. So you graduate from Harvard. When you enter Harvard freshman year, is your goal to get out of Harvard and end up on SNL?
Definitely not my parents' goal.
Right.
I would say that wasn't what they were looking to. I mean, no, it was not. I mean, I didn't even know when I started college. I didn't even know you could really work there. I mean, I knew people. There had to be someone who worked there logically, but I didn't know you could actually try and go and do that. But it was certainly once I graduated college, it was a place I always wanted to apply for, and that's the first two places I applied for were David Letterman, because he was a hero of mine growing up, and SNL.
I mean, doing Weekend Update, it's one thing to be on SNL as a writer, maybe a cast member, but Weekend Update, you're featured every single show at the same exact time every week, and you got to bring it.
Yeah, and I mean, Lauren reminds us, it's like it's like a privilege to get to do that. So you have to always have something, or else it's like, what's the point of this segment? So that's what you have to be on edge about it.
Did you touch base with any of the previous Weekend Update anchors to get tips or tricks or any points?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, pretty much everyone.
Except Chevy Chase hung up on him. He tried to call Chevy.
Yeah, well, he's got great phone bits, so he's always hanging up. That's his thing. Yes, and when I started, like Tina Fey hired me as when she was head writer, and Amy and Seth were both there.
Those three, fantastic. Everybody loves.
They're the best. I mean, they're the best, and they're super fun to hang out with. They're really sweet people. They're just funny. They're like what you want. You want to hang out with people who are funny. So they were very helpful. I reached out to them, talked to them. But the crazy thing you hear from everyone is they can't give you much advice. You kind of have to just do it and figure it out. And like the advice you get, you'll later on be like, oh yeah, that's good advice.
Colin Jost in studio with us. He'll be at Zanies this weekend. When you do Weekend Update, you tell the joke, and the way that you stare into the camera and they wait a beat is just priceless.
I've done it in my stand-up too. I mean, that's I kind of like just seeing what happens with the joke, like letting it ride and seeing what happens. And I do that in my stand-up too. And I used to watch Norm Macdonald a ton when I was growing up on SNL, and I loved how he would just stare it down. He'd be like, well, take it or leave it. This is the joke. And I really admire that.
Chicago has played an important role in Saturday Night Live over the years. I mean, Second City. I mean, that is the entryway to get onto SNL. I mean, you've got writers. I mean, Katie Rich. She's here from Chicago, one of the up and comers. I mean,
going to her wedding on Saturday.
Really? Yeah. Do you feel stress coming to a city like Chicago? I mean, which is more stress, doing comedy in Chicago or being on SNL every weekend?
Oh, coming to Chicago is a treat. It's not. I don't feel stressed because, especially, I only come in the summers, really. So
of course, like everybody else. Yeah. Can't come during the wintertime. Too much
it's not
snow.
Like New York is great.
You grew up in
like
New
I'm
York.
coming
It's
from
the
LA,
same thing, right?
Yeah, exactly. but yeah, it seems a little colder here sometimes, right? I don't know. Chicago's great, and it's such a good comedy city. When you're here, you feel like every time I go to Second City. I was at an Improv Olympic last night, just seeing a show because I happen to have the night off, which is a rarity, and it was great. And just it's the best. It's the best to come in and just see talent. There's so many people who are great here.
This past season, 40 years of SNL, you guys had that huge party.
Yeah.
Tell us about that, because everybody came back for that.
It was just the crazy, the juxtaposition of people that you'd look around and just see, like Jack Nicholson talking to Derek Jeter, like just the combinations of people, Peyton Manning talking to like Rudy Giuliani. You just didn't see those combinations of people anywhere else. And like, if you think about events that are around, like if you go to the Grammys, if you go to the Oscars, if you just don't see those same types overlapping. They're just it was a cool mix. You're not going to see Rihanna talking to Chris Kattan anywhere else.
Well,
who's talking to Chris Kattan?
Not many people. Well, we all grew up with SNL, and when we watch the 40th anniversary, it's like, man, I remember that, and it's a part of our lives. That's what's great about it.
Yeah, I knew you just saw all those generations. It's the coolest thing, and all interacting. It's like getting a superhero. It's like seeing Avengers or something for me. Like you saw all these people coming together that I loved growing up.
Do you feel pressure? Because every year, Saturday Night Live, every new season, they go, this season sucks. Man, 2 seasons ago, that cast was where it was at, and now they've got all these new people. Every year, you add new people, and they evolve and they grow within the show. But at the beginning of every season, it just seems like everybody hates it because they don't know who the characters are going to be, because they're not Dan Aykroyd, and they're not Eddie Murphy, and it's Pat. You're not getting, we have to develop the characters.
Yeah, it's a weird thing where you look at, you're in the hallways and there's photos of all these people who were your heroes growing up, and you kind of have to ignore it on some level and realize, well, I'm not going to be that person, but also I shouldn't be trying to be that person. I should be me, and I should be just not worried about it, because you can't control that. You kind of have to have an attitude of, I'm just going to make my own thing. And when they were all on the show, they were just like, who cares? I'm just doing my thing. Yeah. And that's what you have to get to. That's the place you have to get to. And I think our cast right now is has really developed, and all the people that were new like 2 years ago are really coming into their own, and I think there's a lot of excitement about them, which is cool.
If you watch the show, Bobby Moynihan, if he comes on screen, I start laughing even before he talks, because it's going to be funny.
He's the best.
And Kate McKinnon.
Fantastic.
We just love her.
How many people are playing both Justin Bieber and Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg? I mean, how many people are doing those two things?
Colin Jost in studio from SNL will be at Zanies this weekend. What is your connection with the Chicago Blackhawks?
I have spent some nights out with members of the Chicago Blackhawks.
Like whom? Who are you hanging out with?
I can't name names legally.
So we can, though. Patrick Sharp? Kaner? Who have you been out with?
Sharp's out of town. You can tell us stories. So you've come to town and hung out with the Blackhawks and went out in this city.
Yeah, so we went out. A friend of mine, Steve Byrne, who's a comic.
We've been on his sitcom.
We were on Sullivan and Son last season.
Oh, my God.
Canceled.
I don't want to say because of you, but
okay.
I mean, statistically, when he got married, we all went out, and he's friends with a number of those guys, and we were all out playing whirly ball, and there was a punching bag machine at the whirly ball place. And so I'm playing with all these members of the Blackhawks and really trying my best to keep up. And they're just like zinging this thing, and crazy numbers are coming up. And I'm like, I can do this. And we're drinking. So I just keep hitting it as hard as I possibly can. Do not realize the impact on my hand. Middle of the night, I wake up and I'm like, I need to go to a hospital. And I went and I broke in my hand.
You're kidding me.
From hitting the punching bag.
You were showing off in front of the Blackhawks,
What's the opposite of showing off? Humiliation? I was humiliating myself. That's what I was doing.
That is Chicago to a T. You're always one person away. Steve Byrne, who was a comedian, used to live in Bucktown. You're friends with him. You're on Weekend Update on SNL. It's funny. You're one person away in this city.
And Chicago, Chicago still is a small town in a good way,
You're at Zanies all weekend long, and you have a wedding on Saturday, right?
I do. My friend Katie Rich, who's one of the writers for Weekend Update, is getting married.
Okay. People can go to Zanies.com. Colin Jost, thanks for coming in, man. It's good to see you.
Hey, thank you. And Chicago, we have a movie coming out with Cecily Strong from Oak Park and Mike O'Brien from our show, some Chicago natives that's coming out, and it'll be here in theaters July 24th. So
what do you figure? He's got 2 years left on SNL, and then he goes big time?
What's the name of the movie?
Staten Island Summer. That's where I grew up. It's about a bunch of lifeguards. Kate McKinnon also in it. Bobby Moynihan.
Nice. Colin Jost, thank you, buddy.
Thank you, guys.